All right, so you're thinking about a career in synthetic materials engineering, huh? Designing the stuff of the future, that's got to be exciting. And you found this RoleCatcher guide. Looks like a gold mine of info. It's even got me fired up. What about this field really caught your eye?
It's more than just knowing how materials work, like at the molecular level, right?
Yeah.
It's about taking that knowledge and engineering solutions. Lighter airplanes, more efficient solar cells, you name it. This guide really nails that sense of possibility.
For sure. For sure. They dive right in with this what they do section. And honestly, it makes the day-to-day of a synthetic materials engineer sound pretty dynamic. We're not just talking about lab coats and beakers here, are we?
Not at all. It really emphasizes how involved these engineers are every step of the way, developing the materials, designing the systems to produce the whole 9 yards. Imagine creating a whole new plastic, biodegradable, super strong. It's not just the material, it's making it a reality, scaling it up.
Which is where the whole chemical engineering side comes in, right?
Yeah.
Anyone can mix stuff in a lab, but to actually design the manufacturing process around a new material, that's another beast.
Exactly. And this
Yeah.
guide connects those dots really well. It highlights how crucial chemical engineering principles are, like understanding how reactions happen, how to design the process. It's all about taking it from the lab to the factory floor.
Makes total sense. They also talk about quality control being a huge deal for synthetic materials engineers. I mean,
Mhm.
it makes sense, right? If your material's going into an airplane or a medical device, there's zero room for error.
Absolutely. Precision is key. They actually specifically say examining samples of raw materials to ensure quality, maintaining that integrity. That's huge. Imagine a tiny blip in the plastic used for a medical implant could be
No
disastrous.
kidding. Speaking of which, they list out some pretty incredible industries where these engineers are in demand. Aerospace, automotive, electronics. The possibilities seem endless. You could really apply this knowledge in so many places.
Yeah. It's true. The guide showcases that breadth really well. Think about it. The drive for lighter, more fuel-efficient cars. Synthetic materials are the answer. Carbon fiber composites, high-strength plastics, things like that. These engineers are at the forefront of making those innovations actually happen.
That's what I find so cool about it. It's
Right.
not just lab work. You could potentially be shaping entire industries. Now, they also get into the career path, and they're pretty upfront about this being a demanding field. You need that specialized education.
Yeah, but here's what I like. They don't just list off degrees, they explain why those subjects matter. For example, chemical engineering. They emphasize how it gives you that foundation, to design and optimize the whole process on a large scale, which is crucial when you're manufacturing new materials.
It's like they're making the connection between what you learn in class and how it actually translates to the real world, which honestly is what I'm always looking for, that aha moment.
Yeah. And that's what RoleCatcher does so well. It's not just do this, do that, it's the why behind it all, which can make a world of difference when you're trying to wrap your head around a whole new career path.
Totally, totally. It's like getting a behind-the-scenes look at how all that knowledge you're soaking up actually turns into innovation.
Mm.
The guide mentions other degree paths too, though, like materials science and engineering, even polymer science.
Hmm.
What's the difference there, would you say?
I'm thinking those might be a little more focused, right? Like material science probably goes deeper into the nuts and bolts of, well, materials, how they're structured, their properties, and then polymer science, that's got to be all about polymers, right?
Spot on. And that specialization can be super valuable. This field is huge. Think about it. You could be working with ceramics, composites, biomaterials, nanomaterials. The list goes on.
That's where that career compass thing RoleCatcher has could be clutch.
Hmm.
Help narrow down your interests, figure out what kind of specialization really clicks with your strengths, what you actually enjoy doing. Exactly. Find your niche, right? But no matter what you end up focusing on, one thing's for sure, gotta keep learning. The guide really hammers that home. This field is constantly evolving.
Staying ahead of the curve, they actually say. Makes you realize you got to be adaptable, open to new ideas.
Yeah.
Can't just learn a few things and call it a day, huh?
Not a chance. They're really encouraging this mindset of constant growth.
Yeah.
They even give you specific ways to stay current. Going to conferences, digging into those research papers. Imagine being at one of those conferences, hearing directly from the people who are creating self-healing materials or bio-based plastics that could replace the petroleum ones.
Oh, those bio-based plastics, that's something I wanted to loop back to. The guide mentions that more and more there's this push for sustainable materials, environmentally friendly stuff. Sounds like a huge opportunity for synthetic materials engineers.
It's not just an opportunity, it's kind of a responsibility, don't you think? The whole world's moving towards sustainability, and this field, it's leading the charge. They even give specifics like bio-based polymers, things like PLA, for biodegradable packaging, or PHA. That stuff has potential for medical implants, food packaging. It's wild.
So it's not just about inventing the new, it's rethinking the old, too. How we use stuff, how we get rid of it, closing the loop.
Yeah.
Isn't that the whole circular economy idea?
Exactly. That concept, it's everywhere in this field now. It's not enough to make something cool. Got to think about the whole life cycle, where it comes from, how it's made, what happens when we're done with it.
A whole different way of looking at materials, huh?
Yeah.
And it feels like that's something RoleCatcher is really pushing in this guide. It's not just the technical skills. It's about having that mindset, sustainability, ethical stuff, all that.
Totally. It makes the whole career path that much more compelling, right? It's not just about, can we do this? It's, should we do this? Using tech to build a better future for everyone.
I'm all about that. Now, they also get into this whole thing about standing out in the job market, which, let's be honest, can be a nightmare no matter what you're doing. But that Beat the Automated Recruiter section, that was interesting, especially that AI CV scoring thing. That's like having a cheat code for your job search.
Crazy, right?
Yeah.
It just shows how much tech is changing everything. Not just materials, but how we get hired, too. More and more companies are relying on AI to sift through applicants. So this guide helps you understand how those systems even work, gives you an edge.
So it's not just about having a killer resume anymore. It's about optimizing it for a machine. Do they actually explain how the scoring works, though? I feel like some people might find that a little sus, letting a computer judge their resume like that.
Oh, yeah, they totally address it. They explain that the system, it looks for keywords, skills, the right kind of experience for the specific job you're going for. It's not about tricking it. It's about understanding what employers actually want to see and making sure your resume reflects that.
So it's like having a personalized coach almost, telling you what to highlight, what to beef up on your resume.
Exactly. And it really underscores something people forget. You got to tailor your application every single time. Those generic resumes people send to a million places, they're going straight to the digital trash can.
It's the difference between throwing spaghetti at the wall hoping something sticks versus, like, carefully plating a delicious meal and serving it with confidence.
No, that's an analogy I can get behind. It speaks to the whole presenting yourself part, right? RoleCatcher seems to get that. They really went the extra mile, not just telling you stuff, but giving you actual tools, strategies to succeed.
100%.
No.
From figuring out what skills you need to navigating the whole job search.
Yeah.
They're right there with you.
Which is huge, especially if you're just starting out,
Oh,
Easy to feel overwhelmed with all the options, all the possibilities.
absolutely. Before we move on, though, I wanted to circle back to something you mentioned before. The sheer variety of materials these engineers work with. It's not just about plastics, right?
Oh man, not even close. We're talking ceramics, composites, biomaterials, nanomaterials. This isn't just science, it's like the building blocks of the future. These things are going to revolutionize everything from healthcare to how we get around.
All right, so we've got ceramics, which to me that's pottery, tiles, that kind of thing. How does that translate to this high-tech world?
Great question. Ceramics, they're deceptively versatile, heat-resistant, crazy durable. They're great insulators, too. This guide, it points out how they're being used in aerospace parts, engine components, even microelectronics, medical implants, you name it.
That's nuts. And then there's composites, which, if I'm remembering my science classes right, it's like combining two or more materials right, get the benefits of both.
You got it. And the world of composites, it's massive. You've got fiberglass, think boats, wind turbine blades. Then there's carbon fiber composites, super strong, super light. Those are huge in aerospace and cars.
It's like material science meets alchemy or something, combining elements to create something totally new.
Totally. And then you've got biomaterials. That's a whole other rabbit hole.
Right. Because we're not just talking about synthetic copies of natural stuff. We're talking about making materials that can actually interact with living things. That's got to be complicated.
Insanely. This guide highlights how important biomaterials are in healthcare. Tissue engineering, drug delivery, even artificial organs, it's mind-blowing.
Hold up, artificial organs, that's straight out of sci-fi.
I know, right? It just shows you what's possible in this field. And then you've got nanotech, which is basically manipulating stuff at the atomic level, creating materials with completely new properties, completely new functions.
Nanomaterials.
Yeah.
Those tiny particles, smaller than, like, anything. I know they're used in sunscreen, electronics, everything. But what about in synthetic materials engineering specifically?
They're changing the game. This guide talks about how they're making existing materials better, stronger, lighter plastics, coatings that don't scratch or corrode. but they're also being used to make totally new materials, and we're just scratching the surface of what they can do.
Unlocking a whole new level, that's wild. I'm starting to see why this whole continuous learning thing is so important. A field this fast-paced, you got to be on top of it.
100%. That's what makes this career path so exciting, you know? It's not for the faint of heart, but for those who crave innovation, discovery, it's incredibly rewarding.
I'm sold. So someone's listening to this, they're hooked, right? Want to jump into synthetic materials engineering?
Yeah.
What's step one? How do they dip their toes in, see if it's really for them?
RoleCatcher actually talks about that, which I thought was really cool. They say, start with getting a feel for what the job is actually like day to day.
Because reading about it's one thing, but experiencing it, that's the real deal, huh?
For sure. And internships, co-ops, those are the golden ticket. Work alongside experienced engineers, apply your knowledge to real projects, really get a taste for what it's like in the trenches.
And I'm betting that kind of experience on your resume, that's got to be huge when you're looking for that first job after graduation.
Absolutely. Not just the practical skills either. You're building your network, making connections that could lead to amazing opportunities down the road.
It's like a head start on your career while you're still in school. Speaking of which, networking.
Mm.
What do they say about that? Any field, connections are important, but especially one like this, so collaborative, so fast-paced.
They're all about it. Whole section dedicated to networking. They say go to industry events, join organizations, connect with people on LinkedIn.
So put yourself out there, meet people, build relationships with those already in the field.
Exactly. And not just showing up and handing out business cards. It's about having real conversations, asking good questions, being genuinely interested in what others are doing.
Because people can sniff out a phony a mile away.
Yeah.
Right? It's about building those real connections, shared passions, that kind of thing.
100%. And those connections, they're invaluable. You never know who might have some killer advice or who might know someone who's hiring or who you might even end up collaborating with on a project one day.
It's like building your crew, your support system. People who get it, who can help you through the tough stuff and celebrate the wins with you.
Totally. And RoleCatcher gets that, the whole community aspect. They even have tips for finding mentors, which I thought was awesome.
Mentorship is huge.
Yeah.
Having someone who's been there, done that to guide you, that can make all the difference, especially early on.
Right. And they give really practical advice, how to find potential mentors, how to approach them, how to make it mutually beneficial.
It's like they're taking the mystery out of it, making it less scary, more approachable.
Totally. They emphasize that it's a two-way street. It's not just about what you get, but what you can give back too.
So building that relationship, learning and growing together.
Exactly. And those relationships, they can be so rewarding, both personally and professionally.
They really can. RoleCatcher has seriously outdone themselves with this guide. It's not just info. It's like a blueprint, tools, resources, even guidance on building your network.
For real. They clearly put a lot of work into making this something that's both comprehensive and actually useful.
Absolutely. And I get the feeling that anyone who dives into this thing, they're going to walk away feeling prepared,
Yeah.
ready to take charge of their career,
No doubt. They've covered all the bases.
They really have. Now, we've talked about all the good stuff, but what about the flip side? The challenges, what are those? What should someone be ready for if they're thinking about this career path?
Another good question. It's important to be realistic, right? See the whole picture, warts and all. And RoleCatcher, they're pretty upfront about the tough stuff. This isn't a walk in the park. They're very clear about that. It takes dedication, perseverance, and you got to be comfortable with problem solving, like a lot of problem solving.
So it's not all cool materials and designing awesome stuff. There's real grind involved.
Oh, yeah. The guide doesn't sugarcoat it. They mention the long hours, especially when you're on a tight deadline, trying to meet a goal.
Right, because with this kind of work, developing new materials, figuring out the processes, there's going to be a lot of trial and error.
Tons. And that can be frustrating, let me tell you. You could be stuck on a problem for weeks, months even, and feel like you're getting nowhere.
So you need resilience, got to be able to bounce back, learn from mistakes, and keep going.
Exactly. And be okay with not knowing everything. This field is constantly pushing boundaries, which means there isn't always a right answer, a clear path laid out for you.
It's about embracing the unknown, being comfortable with a little bit of chaos.
Totally. And that requires creativity, ingenuity, thinking on your feet. You might have to invent your own solutions, create your own tools, even develop new ways of testing and analyzing materials.
So it's not just following a recipe, it's coming up with the recipe sometimes.
Precisely. And that's a whole other challenge. But man, when you crack the code, when you find that innovative solution, that feeling is amazing.
The aha moment. Love it. But being realistic here, money talks. We've established this is a growing field, lots of potential, but what's the salary looking like? What can someone expect to earn as a synthetic materials engineer?
I'm glad you asked because RoleCatcher actually gives some solid numbers in the guide.
All right, lay it on me. What are we talking here?
They're clear that it varies a lot, of course. Location, experience, what you studied, what industry you're in, all that plays a role. But on average in the US, a synthetic materials engineer can expect to make around $95,000 a year.
Okay, so comfortable living, even starting out.
For sure. And as you get more experience, climb the ladder, that earning potential, it just keeps going up.
Right, so there's room to grow, which
Yeah.
is always good to know.
Totally. RoleCatcher actually gives some tips on negotiating salary too, which I thought was super helpful, both when you're first starting out and when you're up for a promotion or a new position.
Like what kind of tips are we talking?
Well, they stress the importance of doing your homework. Know the salary range for your position in your area so you know what's reasonable to ask for. They also say to really play up your skills, your experience, connect the dots between what you bring to the table and what the employer needs.
So it's not just what you know, it's how you sell it.
100%. They also say to practice your interview skills, being able to articulate your value, your enthusiasm. That goes a long way when you're face to face with a potential employer.
It's like selling yourself, but not in a sleazy used car salesman kind of way. More like, this is me, this is what I bring to the table, I'm awesome, hire me.
Exactly. And RoleCatcher gives some solid advice on how to do that, even suggesting mock interviews with people in your network to get feedback and build your confidence.
Preparation is key. Now, what about career progression? We've talked entry level, but what about someone who wants to reach the top of the game? What does that climb look like in this field?
They do a great job of laying out the different stages. So a junior engineer, they're probably assisting senior engineers with research, running experiments, analyzing data, that kind of thing. As they gain experience, they might move into designing experiments, leading projects, managing teams.
So gradually taking on more responsibility, building your expertise, proving yourself.
Exactly. And then you get to those senior roles, and it becomes less about hands-on technical stuff and more about strategy, leadership, driving innovation.
So a senior synthetic materials engineer, they might be overseeing whole research teams, managing budgets, working across departments, maybe even presenting at conferences, publishing papers.
Absolutely. They might even be the ones developing patents for new materials or processes. Talk about a feather in your cap.
It's like becoming a rock star in your field. Everyone knows your name, everyone respects your work.
Exactly. And RoleCatcher, they point out that these senior roles often come with a chance to mentor younger engineers, which is super rewarding. You get to give back, help shape the next generation.
Coming full circle from mentee to mentor.
Love it.
Yeah.
And that's something I really appreciate about my own career.
I bet. Now, before we move on to the last part of our deep dive, I wanted to touch on something we've mentioned a few times now. Ethics. This field, it's not just about what you can do, it's about what you should do, right?
Huge point. As synthetic materials engineers, we have a responsibility to use our knowledge for good. That means thinking about the consequences, both intended and unintended, of the things we create.
It's not just about making cool stuff, it's about making sure that cool stuff doesn't come back to bite us or the planet later on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And RoleCatcher, to their credit, they don't shy away from that. They really encourage aspiring engineers to think critically about the impact of their work, to be advocates for responsible innovation.
Love that. It's about having a conscience, using your skills to make the world a better place, not just a more technologically advanced one.
100%. They even give real examples of how engineers are grappling with these questions, like biodegradable plastics. Great idea, right? Get rid of plastic waste. But some of them, they need specific conditions to break down properly, and there are concerns about what they do to industrial composting systems.
A good reminder that there isn't always an easy answer. Even with the best intentions, things can have downsides.
Absolutely. That's why it's so crucial for synthetic materials engineers to talk to each other, but also to other scientists, to policymakers, to the public. We need to have open, honest discussions about the potential benefits and risks of new materials and technologies. No one has all the answers, and we need to be ready to adjust course if things aren't working out the way we hoped.
It's about approaching innovation with a little bit of humility. We don't know everything, and we need to be open to changing our minds, to learning from our mistakes.
Totally. And that takes a commitment to always learning, to being willing to change how we think and how we approach problems.
So adaptability is key. Not just with the materials, but with our mindset too.
Exactly. And that's what makes this field so exciting, so intellectually stimulating. You're constantly learning, growing, pushing the limits of what's possible.
So, for someone who's still on the fence, what would you say is the most rewarding part of being a synthetic materials engineer?
For me, it's the chance to work on real problems, problems that affect people's lives in a tangible way.
Knowing that your work matters, that it's part of something bigger.
Exactly. Whether it's developing materials for renewable energy, making cars lighter and more efficient, or using biomaterials to advance healthcare, the work we do, it has the potential to make a real difference.
That's powerful. And on a personal level, I imagine there's a lot of satisfaction in solving those complex problems, seeing your ideas become reality.
Absolutely. There's nothing quite like watching something you designed, something you poured your heart and soul into, come to life. It's your creativity, your ingenuity, right there in front of you.
It's like watching your ideas take shape in the real world.
Exactly. And that feeling, it never gets old.
As we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with this thought. We've covered a lot of ground, the technical stuff, the ethical dilemmas, the career possibilities. But if you take away one thing, it should be this.
Hit me with it.
The future is literally made of the materials we create today. And as synthetic materials engineers, you have the power to shape that future. You can make it more sustainable, more just, more prosperous for everyone. It's a tough job, no doubt, but the rewards, they're huge. If you're up for the challenge, take that leap. You won't regret it.
Beautifully said. It's an amazing time to be in this field, and I can't wait to see what the future holds.
To everyone listening, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into synthetic materials engineering. Hopefully it sparked your curiosity, inspired you to see what's out there.
And remember, the future is in your hands.
And that's a wrap on this episode of The Deep Dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and never stop asking those big, important questions. It really is mind-blowing when you think about it. The choices we make now, the stuff we create, the tech we use, that's what shapes the world for our kids, our grandkids. It's a lot of pressure, but also kind of exciting, you know?
Totally. And this RoleCatcher guide, they get that. They don't shy away from the responsibility, the ethical side of things. They actually want people going into this field to think about those big questions, to push for innovation that doesn't just sound cool, but is actually good for the world.
Refreshingly honest, right? It's not enough to be good at the science. Got to have a heart. Use those skills for good.
100%. They even give these real-world examples of ethical dilemmas engineers are dealing with, like biodegradable plastics. On the surface, amazing. Get rid of all that plastic trash. But some of them, they don't break down as easily as we'd like, and they can mess up those big industrial composting systems.
Yeah, it's never as simple as it seems, is it? Even when we try to do the right thing, there can be downsides, unintended consequences.
Exactly. And that's why communication is so key. Synthetic materials engineers, they can't be siloed off in a lab somewhere. They need to be talking to other scientists, to policymakers, to regular people about the potential benefits and risks of this stuff. It's about being honest, being open to the idea that maybe we don't have all the answers.
And being willing to change course if we need to, right?
Approaching innovation with a little humility.
Totally. We have to be lifelong learners, always adapting to new information, new perspectives.
Flexible not just with the materials themselves, but with our thinking.
That's the key. And honestly, that's what keeps this field so fresh, so intellectually challenging. You're always learning, always pushing those boundaries.
So for someone who's listening to all this and they're intrigued, but maybe a little hesitant, what would you say is the most rewarding part of being a synthetic materials engineer? What's that aha moment, the thing that makes it all worthwhile? For me, it's knowing that what I do, it has the potential to actually make a difference in the world.
That your work matters.
Exactly. Whether it's new materials for green energy, making cars more efficient, developing those biomaterials for healthcare, it's about contributing to something bigger than yourself.
It's about leaving the world a little better than you found it. And I imagine there's a certain satisfaction that comes from taking an idea, a concept, and actually turning it into something tangible.
Oh yeah, that feeling of seeing something you designed, something that started as a thought in your head, become a real thing. It's incredible. That's your creativity, that's your ingenuity right there in the world.
Bringing your ideas to life.
Exactly.
As we start to wrap up our deep dive here, I want to leave everyone with one final thought. We've covered a lot of ground, the technical stuff, the ethics, the career stuff. But if you only remember one thing from today, let it be this.
I'm listening.
The future is literally made of the materials we create right now. And synthetic materials engineers, you're the ones who decide what that future looks like.
Yeah.
You want a world that's sustainable, equitable, prosperous. You have the power to build it. It's not going to be easy, but it's worth it. Take that leap. Dive in head first.
Perfectly said. It's an amazing time to be in this field, and I'm so excited to see what we come up with next.
For everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of synthetic materials engineering. We hope we've sparked your curiosity, inspired you to explore the possibilities.
Remember, the future is waiting to be built.
And that, my friends, is a wrap on this episode of The Deep Dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and never be afraid to ask those big questions.